Welcome back, guys. My name is Alberto Chan, and I'm here with Kash. We're bringing you another episode of our podcast sponsored by TPH Ventures. How are you, Kash? What's going on?
Awesome. Never been better. Think it's been a busy season of founders approaching how to raise money, isn't it? Every single day. Yeah,
It's almost like at some point we start feeling like a broken record, right? All
absolutely.
right. So we spoke a little bit of fundraising. We spoke a little bit of what we do. What do you think about talking like why 99% of MedTech HealthTech startups fail? What's going on? Like, how can we help people out there?
Yeah. I think you're right. It almost sounds like a broken record, but it is what it is, right? So we've been talking to founders, right? They come with hope and a lot of motivation that they can raise money because they have a great product. Not really sure if the product actually can make money. Not a viable business model. They may have a great team in terms of doctors. Mostly that's also probably one of the reasons why they think they can raise any amount of money. They may seem to have a clinical product that is a super innovation that will change something in some industry. And then they are worried like, hey, we've been trying for a year, 2, 3 years, and we are not able to raise money. Raise money from friends and family sometimes, but then end up spending all the money on building, not validating enough on whether they can even go to market and sell it. And then you're done with the money and you're wondering why people are not investing in you. So it's very obvious, isn't it? So for a lot of founders, I think money is hard to come by. And I think one of the things investors appreciate is founders' ability to sell how they have taken that money, what did they really achieve with the money, and the story sometimes has to really make sense. Even if you go and talk to a VC and say, hey, we built something, we came so far, this is what we did. I think the story has to kind of fit in. It cannot be something that is force fitted into something where you don't really have an honest kind of pathway or an honest kind of trajectory of where you started, where you are in year one, year two, year three. So that's that. I think founders probably do not have that clarity on why investors actually even are interested in talking to them.
Very interesting. Let's try to break it down because I think it's a lot to unpack. So I heard about whether your product's good or not, whether you know how to go to market or not, or you're saving money or splurging money, right? Or the milestones they're accomplishing with it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so all of these things is essentially a variable to what makes a good or a bad startup
Mm,
successful or not successful. But let's start with the first one. So you said, and I concur, that most people believe that their startups are their babies and it's the most cool product in the world and, very much needed. How do we validate that? What does it mean that their product's great? Like, how can we help people out there to make that assessment, whether they have something worth fighting for or they should,
mm.
move on to the next idea?
Yeah, that's a true $1 billion question out there, Alberto. It's like if founders did really know if a product is really useful versus it's a nice to have or it's a must have. Broadly in terms of product market fit, I think what works in SaaS broadly may not really work in healthcare. That's also the reason why fundraising in healthcare is very unique. You cannot kind of have the common metrics that are valid for a generic SaaS, right? If you built a SaaS for HR tech or an education platform or like a enterprise tech, which is not healthcare purely, the metrics, the validation cycles, the customer discovery, a ton of what you do is very different. When it comes to healthcare, I think a lot of success depends upon your ability as a founder, even before you build a product, to really validate what is your pathway, how do you really want to go to market. And then, unless you're doing medtech and really hard tech, or maybe sometimes it's called tech med, it's medtech and also tech med, where there's more tech into the med. I think a lot of success depends upon the founders' simultaneous efforts on validating business while kind of building the product. Even if they have acquired an IP, I think we see a lot of use cases where founders have acquired some IP from a third party IP and then they feel like, hey, this is a great IP to have. So maybe we will just start making millions of dollars the moment we have the IPs. Wrong, right? So given IP, how do you even go to market? Who's going to pay? I think a lot of these questions
But
can,
but but
yeah.
but stay with me. It's interesting because let's say most of the deals that we see, let's say whether it was academia like a PhD or MD, right? Part of their grant, they will hire a commercialization, a regulatory consultant, and they put their business plan. Here's my procedure code. Here's how much money the industry makes. What's my TAM, my SAM, my SON,
Yeah.
how I'm going to sell it. They have all figured it out. So what you're saying is that's not enough?
And maybe that is enough for you to feel good about the fact that you did all the basic things ticked off, but the most essential thing is missed out. The most essential
Okay.
thing is not, TAM, SOM, SAM. I mean, they're still nice to have in a business. I mean, you need some clarity, obviously. But I think the most essential thing in a product is like, do I have the right team? Even if I raise money, are we the right guys to go to the market and really sell this stuff? I mean, on paper, everything looks nice, but execution. The real deal is execution. The game lies on your ability as a founder to give enough trust, not just in investors, right? I mean, enough trust even in your customer. I mean, why do you find so hard for first time founders or even second time founders to kind of sell? Forget about raising money. Even the art of actually convincing someone to get you that POC or to get you that is very hard. It again comes on trust. Can you deliver? I mean, given that you made a huge promise, do you have the right people to deliver? And when you go to an investor, I think you demonstrate the same kind of skills or the same sort of trust, right? The investors is not worked with you most likely, unless you're a second time founder. Things may be different because investor knows you, and then raising fund becomes a little more different. Not that it becomes very easy, but slightly easier for sure because they already know you. Maybe if the same team is there, it's something, but if you're a founder that raised money versus a founder that has never raised money, meaning you're actually kind of a baby. You're trying to create that first impression. So, what do babies need to convince their moms that they're capable, right? They need to kind of show that they can walk without support. Now, how can a startup actually demonstrate that they can somehow survive and go to some meaningful point without like needing so much? Because if I had all the money, like obviously anybody can be successful in a very broad context, but I think the VCs also have seen like what are your survival skills as a founder? How frugal are you? How do you spend the money wisely to get the results? Are you going to put all the money in things that don't matter or get you results? Because founders we have seen that they have these fancy kind of fund utilization plan with a big Excel sheet where they say, okay, these are all these areas where you're going to invest money, and then it doesn't really work the same way. I mean, when it comes to results and actions, you see that sometimes the best founders are the ones who take very little money and can actually do it very well with little amount of money.
So you're trying to say that there's a chicken egg problem here with money or with product?
Yeah.
So in a way, what we tend to see generally is, let's say you have a product that you raise all the money you're going to market and you need to start selling. Usually what we do is we do conferences so that we can find customers. So in a way, what you're saying that's not the right way.
Well, that's probably the right way when you are selling a product that you can find customers in conferences. But again, coming back to healthcare, it's not so easy to find a customer. Firstly, you should understand the customer. And this is my question. I think you have been helping so many companies how to find that first paying customer in healthcare. I mean, SaaS, it's different, right? You can go to a conference to find a customer for a product that probably helps people in doing something, right? Where the customers are relatively easier because they're individuals. Even if enterprises, if they're not strictly healthcare, there's not a problem of who's going to pay reimbursement, like, what are the health plans? Are they self funded, fully funded? Like, what kind of spectrum they come under? Who's going to cover and why? I think it's a little more nuanced and complex when you're dealing with healthcare. And that's the reason why you cannot again apply the same wisdom of Peter Thiel or Y Combinator's. Hey, this is how you do a startup. Unfortunately, fundraising in healthcare doesn't work like that, right? I mean, you cannot just go to Google or like ChatGPT and say, I'm raising this. And that's precisely why people are not able to get results. Because they're following the same logic of raising money for other sectors, and healthcare, depending on whether you're doing a medical product, like is it regulated product, is it like an insurance kind of product, or is it like a health tech product or a clinical product? It depends on what kind of sector they're doing it. Challenge is very unique. And you cannot just use one size that fits all, obviously. Like how it is easy to sell consumer app or consumer tech or even enterprise SaaS. I think there are some models that you can actually coach and teach people how to do it. Here it gets a little more complex, a little more nuanced. And my question to you, Alberto, I think since I have been talking about this, what do you think these founders, the common mistakes they make in assuming that they have a great product? One, the assumption that the product is great, and two, the assumption that this product will automatically sell itself because there is a great IP. They have like 10 patents. I'm the best guy in the world who did this product. And then they're wondering why they're not able to find a customer. So what do you think like is right or wrong in this thinking?
Here's how I think it, right? In an early stage startup, sales is the medicine that cures all diseases. So in that way, I concur to you that, having the right team is so important. But it's really not about like, did my doctor come from Stanford or did my CTO come from Google? Really is ultimately to a point. It's like, if I have to make $1 today, how easy or how hard and how expensive it is, right? If I go to a conference, like it may take me 12 months to work that relationship for someone to come and, take a chance on, right? Like most startups could die tomorrow. So why would I bother to introduce you to my health system, for instance?
Yeah.
And if you're not going to be around like in 6 months, right?
Very
So
true. Yeah.
so you have to think of like from the other side perspective. So
I will stop you here. I will stop you
Okay.
here. That's very interesting. What you said. What you said is probably the gold of everything that I've heard so far. The trust on the founder or the person who's building the product. I think essentially what you're saying is, I think you're risking your relationship because you do not know if they will survive. That's very powerful. Is there a history of people that kind of don't exist after 6 months or 1 year, where that relationship of the introduction or like how you kind of said, right? You couldn't have said it better. So is that the main reason, the trust on these products that they may not exist or they are probably a fad that will just die away, right? Is that how healthcare works? Doesn't
So
really.
it's not really about fad, right? Like if we notice a common trend that's going on, we call it zombie funds and zombie startups,
Yeah.
right? Like you have the entity there, but for 10 years, nothing is really changing. Nothing is really happening. And the reason from one side is like, are you going to be able to survive for like 10 years? Should I care enough about you? Because if I'm changing workflow, that's so much investment from my side that if you're not going to be around 6 months, why would I bother about it? And the other, I think it's almost like, this may sound very academic, but I really like it. I think everything's about game theory in a way. Having the best product is equivalent of success, right? Like if we look at our healthcare industry, we're the most expensive, most inefficient. And in our heads, this is bad, right? But if you follow the money, is this bad?
Nope, not at all. Actually,
This is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? The more people are sick, the more they need care, the more, stuff I can sell.
Unfortunately, that's how it is. Yeah. Yes.
And it's different than selling, like Ferrari. There's people that want to buy a Ferrari because they love the car, they want the status, right? It's a luxury item, right? Healthcare, I can charge whatever I want because you don't have a choice. It's either you're going to leave or you're going to die. So inefficiency on the system, it's actually very, very helpful for profit-driven company, right? If you look at all the drugs, all the therapies, we're looking at curing the most important things. We're not looking at why we actually had to go through all these things to get you there. So, for instance, on my side, often when I hear about healthcare, when people are buying healthcare for employer, they'll say, I just want my employees to have the best care when they need it. What does that really mean? It means that they want the best hospital. They want to go to this VIP suite inside that hospital that costs you like $100,000 a day. So they have the best treatment, right? That's what we think about healthcare. But how do you actually improve healthcare? It's by not going to this VIP suite. It's by not going to the need of surgery, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at where people make money, they want you to have a stage 4 cancer. And they come with this pill, right, with this treatment that costs you like $500,000 per therapy per year. And after 5 years, they'll cure you. But then they made $5 million out of you. If that was true, it would be okay. But late stage cancer has a 20% survival chance versus early stage cancer with $50,000 surgery, you could cure it at 90+%.
Yeah.
And so that's the first premise of game theory, which is like, having the best product doesn't necessarily mean you win because you have to understand what the incentives around people. Like if you think that doctors are interested in helping save lives, we wouldn't have like specialty doctors. Like doctors don't want to be primary care doctors. They don't want to go to like Scottsboro, Alabama, right? That we have you are in rural health. We inherently have a problem with rural health is just because of access. Like no one wants to go there. What do people want? They want to be the neurosurgeon that cures, right? They want to be the cancer surgeon. That's where they make money.
Yeah.
And that's how they make a name for themselves. So that's the first premise. Having a good product doesn't mean anything until you understand what are the forces behind the ecosystem to make you win. All right?
Yeah.
There's always a carrot and a stick. So having a good product gets you to the table, right? Now you're playing with people.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you're going to win. So what's the next thing you got to look? You talk about team.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're an early stage startup, you got $0. Why do you need a good team?
That's a great question, right? Yeah. I mean,
right?
Yeah.
Because for everything that you do will cost you $30,000. At the end of the year, you spend like $500,000 just in conferences, events, dinners, right? Like you have nothing to show for it in the end. Because if your sales life cycle takes 24 months, that's why you need to raise a lot of dollars.
Yeah, true.
Right?
You do. Yeah.
And so what a good team helps you is for you to not to raise a lot of dollars, right? Because you think that the money's free because you're giving equity. Because, oh, no, don't worry. I'm going to do a safe note and I don't have to worry about dilution later on, whatever, right? You think that's free money, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
Like it's better if you give an actual advisor, like a consultant that becomes advisor to your firm that he has like, 1 to 5%. And then with one phone call, he can put you in front of the person and explain why that you should be doing this. And your sales life cycle reduces from like 24 months to like 6 months. That's where the value is at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we got switched that we want to be in conferences and speaking sessions. Right. Podcasts showing how great we are.
Yeah.
But if you notice, like the power play here is the richer you are, the less you know about them. Right.
Yeah.
So second piece is the team. The reason why the team's important is to reduce the cost of the business.
Wow. What a great way of saying this. I mean, I would stop here because this is a great point. I think this is worth appreciating and also digging a little more deeper. You mentioned something before leading here. So there are two key takeaways. Like one is like the understanding the strong forces of the market in healthcare, like founders, I think ability or inability to understand and appreciate how hard it is to understand the forces. And then saving money because of team. Like team is because you don't want to invest and spend that 500K because then you need to raise money. And so many startups that we see, they want to raise money to spend on all of what you mentioned, like all these conferences. And then even if I talk to an investor, I want to not see expenses. I want to see results. I want to see outcomes. So don't tell me like, hey, it's going to cost me this much. Tell me, okay, even if it's going to cost me this much, what are you going to do with that? And how are you going to, grow faster? So one word that comes to me is speed, or I would call it velocity because it has a direction. It's a vector. So velocity is not understood, I believe, by healthcare founders. They're already burdened by the industry standard that healthcare is slow. So they take it as an excuse to kind of be even more slower than what they are. And then their poor choices of investing and not understanding the market forces, as you rightly said, and also not acknowledging that to build a team. And it's not easy for every founder to build a team. And you see so many founders being solo, or they have very incompetent, not really complementary teams. How do the founders actually correct that? And how do they kind of do this faster? I mean, speed is the name of the game. All founders, irrespective of whether it's healthcare or not, but healthcare, it's slightly harder to be faster because it's a little more tricky for the same reasons that you said, because the forces of the market are a little more complex.
So let's take a couple of real life examples, right? We just won't name it, but we were working a couple startups, and something that it's unique to me the way I see it, but it's normal to the industry, right? So let's say you're the doctor. Hey, this is a great idea. And then you hire someone with a great pedigree. So someone that comes from Google or someone from Baptist Hospital, right? Or like whatever.
Yeah.
And so you have this payroll that's costing you like $200,000 per month. And what do you need to do to turn sales? You got to hire someone else that you call a vendor partner to get the job done. So what's happening is that our corporate experience is not being translatable to entrepreneurship, right? Having 200 plus years of experience in a pitch deck doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to convert sale. And if you have to pay 10 people to get one sales, then you probably have the wrong team.
Yeah. Do you think that this is a common phenomenon amongst like clinician-led startups, or like is that a trend that you see amongst people who are scientists or people who are more like innovative? They think they have a great product, and then I think we've seen at least 4 to 5 similar stories across, right? The product is great, but then somehow it's either the team or the speed at which they're doing things. The stubbornness, founder is not coachable to even make the founder sure that, this is not what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to do. It's a lot of that education that I think we've been doing with a few founders. So I think these are some of the reasons, but what do you think is the prime reason why it's so hard? There is a play in which you could have fractional consultants to fractional team players, right? Fractional CXOs or members that actually are real advisors doing real things, execution, not just telling strategic things, versus people who are contributing with equity.
So I'm going to make a little joke here, and then you get back to answer your question.
Yeah, sure.
So I used to run like hospitality business, and in hospitality, the most successful restaurants, hotels, all these places you call customer service, right? You're like, I had the best customer service. They were so attentive to me. They were really nice. The way they smile, I had such a great time, right? Okay. So in hospitality, the way that I used to tell my servers that customer service is the consequence to the KPI that you need to understand whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. So my servers will come to me and say, what is customer service? What's they need water? If it's half full, I'm going to, fill it, make sure I know everything that they need ahead. I can talk about the best wine, make them have a good time, tell a great joke, create a good vibe, right? And I used to tell them, this is the consequence of something else. And what is that something else? You got to put this KPI in your head. We call it average table ticket. So if your average ticket in your restaurant's $50, good customer service means they spend $500. Has nothing to do with whether you put the water, if you make the joke. These are all things that you do to make sure that your KPI increases from $50 to $500. Wow. Do that consistently. Right?
Yeah.
So then go back to your question. Yeah. Like people are getting lost in the weeds of being hard or easy. If you can tone everything down and follow the money and take one KPI, right? Which is, what is my customer acquisition cost?
Yeah.
Will that increase or will that decrease? Therefore, you know whether this is a good choice or a bad choice. Yeah. If I hire someone that I think is very smart, it'll cost me, $20,000 a month. And that person brings, McKinsey, that's going to cost me an extra $1 million to get his job done. My customer acquisition cost tripled, doubled, quadrupled. Versus, for instance, I hired a person that it's already going to bring his own leads and is going to convert that without extra. So I'd rather pay him $30,000, $40,000 above market, because in the end, he's decreasing my customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
And so another thing you hear is, well, we don't have customer acquisition costs because all the work's done by our vendor partners. And you're like, well, that's not true, because if you're, let's say, splitting fees, you're leaving value on the table. So then you're doing a disservice to your own company by not understanding how the value chain works, because you're trying to save cost.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So sometimes you hear like the most important thing in a company is its team, its people. All right. It's true. You should pay them well. But to ultimately think about this metric, is my customer lifetime value increasing or decreasing? Is my customer acquisition cost increasing or decreasing? Right. So if you hire someone to just go to these conferences to be your sales rep, guess what? You hired a wrong person.
Right. Absolutely. I think you said a beautiful thing. I want to go back to that example of customer support, that example that you gave. I think to me, it looks like from what you said, fundraising is also similar to the entire process. Fundraising is a consequence, it's like an after effect of doing all of the things right. I mean, if you're a founder that has done all of the things, like your understanding of the product, your building of the team, working on the right product and validating that that is the right product, and then building a team that is actually able to really acquire customers, having those right numbers and metrics, being very self-aware, then automatically I think you will attract good investors. So fundraising is a consequence of doing all of the above. And while you're doing that, obviously to maintain a professional enough data room, if you're raising a series A or even a seed, to have that really at place, because most founders also don't have a lot of things in place, and to execute and do all of the above. As you said, if the food is good and the rest of the things, and you're keeping your costs low, and you have a certain budget for like other things, then as a result you would have great customer acquisition, and thereby you will have somebody wanting to invest and they'll come back, right? It's like a return of the same customer. So if you were to put the same analogy, I kind of liked it because it's a very simple analogy for anybody to literally understand, even applies to healthcare, is what are those things to you, what are those things that people are not doing right? Just to start with, what are they doing wrong? I mean, we right now kind of pointed at some of them, their inability or to look at certain things, not because they're somehow not looking at it, they're not probably seeing it because of not having the right advisors and team, or not getting the right support. But what are some of the other things that founders can change, right? If there was some option or someone they could actually change and then get into a pathway that is more investable, because they will eventually get into those kind of processes. Essentially, it's a step by step thing that if you did that, there's no reason why you're not investable. Your probability of getting funding almost increases exponentially. And if you don't do that, like founders wonder why they're not getting funded now. We know why.
Okay, I'm going to try to give 3 tips. So the first one is, instead of looking at the product as the most important, so usually the first people you tend to hire, if you're like the CEO of something, you try to look at your, best doctor to be in your pitch deck, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, you should be interviewing who's going to be your commercial lead. And when they say, I manage 200 people, I know how sales reps work, yada, yada.
Yeah.
That guy may be a little bit too late for you. Meaning, at early on, someone that needs to manage 200 people to get a sale done, he's not going to be able to go knock at doctor's office and sell your product. He may not have the relationships anymore. So for early stage startups, it's better if you get someone that's younger. If you have to take your product tomorrow at like 100 clinics, that person would say, okay, I'll get it done. Right? So then that's the first thing you have to do. You got to understand who's going to be your commercial lead. And there's nothing to do with experience. Everything to do with over Rolodex. The guy could be 60 and he has that Rolodex, as long as he's going to reduce your customer acquisition costs. So that's the first thing I do in every startup that I go. Because then, like, if you keep playing that valuation game, I'm going to bill $1 million year one because it's only 1% of the SAM and the SON and the TAM. And I'm going to grow at 2% every year. Guess what's going to happen? It's what's happening in our industry right now. None of these companies are being able to bill $1 million from day one. And there's less and less capital because we don't know how to return the capital. So I like to always think about these things from a bottoms up forecast, right? Make sure you know where the pipeline is. If you have to knock that person's door, you understand. And it's not going to cost you. Maybe, you got to pay someone's flight to go do a visit. But comparing to like LSI, when you're paying like, $30,000 just to be there, it's completely different. It's like how many steps per sales will take you, right? So that's number one. Make sure you understand who's really going to lead commercial, whether it's you or someone else, and how much that CAC's going to go up or go down. Okay. So the second thing is money. We are thinking that getting money is transactional. If I have a good product, a good valuation, you should pay money on it. But at early stage, that's not the case. At a later stage, if we're talking about Series B, where you're deploying, $10 to $100 million in capital, then yes. Why? Because then you're comparing to the performance of other asset classes, right? if I put in treasury bills, if I put in the market, they're looking for diversification and higher risk for higher return. That's true. But for, let's say we're talking about $50,000 check to the first $5 million raise. These are not transactional business. Like if you're raising, $100,000 from like 500 people or 50 people, right? These people put money in because either A, they have someone that's gone through that problem, so they care, or they're personally going through that problem, right? Is a doctor that day in, day out is really pissed with the way it is, right? Yeah. And so to your point, money is a consequence of that relationship. So when founders come and say, oh, you have 3 months left of burn rate, I need to raise ASAP, right? Guess what happened?
Yeah.
So they didn't build a relationship. And so the reason why this is important is because the value of the check is not in the check. It goes back to the CAC again. It's how many doors that investor can help you open to either another investors, to a follow-on money, or to different opportunities to build your business, right? But we are all looking just at the cash as the primary objective. But cash is not the primary objective. The primary objective is to reduce the customer acquisition cost, the operating cost that's going to take you to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you do that? I mean, you need to know a lot of things, the forces of market, as you said, right? A lot of assumptions. I think, again, this is a big topic that we need a separate dedicated sort of podcast on how founders, even very seasoned and experienced ones, they don't really have these things accounted properly. I mean, there's entire estimation of expenses of customer acquisition and activities. They actually market so bizarre in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And it's a big flag because investors obviously see that. I mean, they know it. They see that the founder is not capable because even though the product and everything looks nice, but that's where the founder's in as a CEO on knowing that I'm really aware that this is a hard problem, but I'm also aware that this is how I'm going to make it better. And then the ability of actually convincing and executing that on the thin budget, right? I mean, if you're budgeting low, then you have to also have the confidence to execute it and explain why you can do it. Because if you're doing a cancer drug, you cannot budget yourself so low that you do not know what you're doing. At the same time, if you're building a health tech which doesn't have any regulatory, you cannot have a budget of doing a drug. Then you have to be reasonable in asking for the right money, spending it on the right ways and not overspend. I think this is also one of the reasons why I think they don't attract good investors. The moment you talk about your fund utilization plan, I think investors probably wonder why you think you're being ghosted because you've exposed yourself on like expenses in a crazy way that no investor wants to talk.
Yeah, and like the third tip is if you don't understand the market dynamics, you will not understand your go-to-market. Meaning, absolutely. For instance, we have the biggest electronic healthcare record company in America, call it Epic, right? You can interview, 10 people or 100 people. Most of them will tell you they're not really happy with it. And a ton of them could say there's a lot of improvements could be made. How many companies of electronic health records there are out there? A lot. How many of them are successful?
Very
close to zero.
Yeah.
And so why is it so hard to change or improve electronic health records when we know that this is the most important piece of the whole healthcare? It's like you don't know where to fix and you don't know what's wrong. So why is it so hard to improve electronic healthcare records systems?
Yeah, I mean,
because it doesn't help anyone.
Yeah. I mean, there's no upside of doing the improvement, right? I mean, the innovation has no value because nobody's life, barring the patients, nobody actually cares about the patients, I guess. But I don't think
it's not so much about no one cares about the patient, but it's more of like
there's no value in this sense. There's no value in kind of improving an EHR, right? I mean,
no, it's like, for instance, how many years a person will stay in the job? Probably 2.
Yeah. Again,
so for you to come into a big hospital, even a small business, to change your electronic health record, that could be a year to 2 years of your life. And if stuff goes wrong, whose fault is it? It's yours, right? And so that's why in healthcare, we don't disrupt, we increment.
That's so valuable. It seems very generic, but that's the most valuable thing. So all of those founders who want to disrupt, good luck to them. Probably they will disrupt, but I think it's a lot about the incremental innovation before you
But
could
that's
stop.
that's the key of understanding market dynamics is like,
Yeah.
okay, who are you disrupting and what kind of value you're creating? Right? Like for instance, at the university, we're looking at IP that does subdermal hematoma surgery. So when you have like a cranial surgery, sometimes you can have hematomas, and then the doctor has to come in and open again and open again and open again, right? Technically, how does a hospital make money? By surgery codes, right? They get a fee for service.
And fee for service from the payers.
So from a hospital perspective, would they want to change anything in the way it's being done? Not necessarily.
Not really, unless
because otherwise they lose money. Right?
True.
So that's why they rather invest in the look and feel, right? They rather look very grandiose hospital, very clean hospital, very modern hospital. They rather invest in that because they want things to keep steady. They want you to keep coming having that surgery. Okay, so in that sense, that IP wouldn't work because it disrupts the cash flow. But then you have to look at the other side. Is like, even though doctors know they make money out of surgery, there's a thing that they hate, which is operating the same patient again. Because no doctor wants them to die in their hands. And so if you have this thing that has like 3 or 4 times got to operate in the same patient, the chance of that patient dying are really high. Right? So the risk reward is no longer there for the doctor. It doesn't matter what the hospital says.
True. Yeah.
Right? The doctor says, I'm not going to operate this. The patient's going to die in my hand. I don't want it. Right? So then the CFO of the hospital has nothing to say about it. So now we have this new procedure that will reduce by 90% the chance of a second surgery on the same thing for the same problem. Then your chances of being accepted are probably higher. Because now we're talking about liability insurance, like lawsuits. We're talking about life or death situations, all these things. But a lot of people do, let's say, diabetes. We still don't know whether diabetes is the cause or the consequence. Like some people are saying that Alzheimer's right now is actually the consequence of diabetes, or Alzheimer's is diabetes number 3. I don't know if you heard, right? Because like one of the things that healthcare is always working with uncertainties, even though we tend to think that this is certain, but it's all uncertainty. Like every year you'll learn something new. So, but we know one thing, what you eat is what you are. And so if diabetes was such an important thing, wouldn't we think twice, even though the research is saying that actual refined sugar is actually worse than even alcohol? Like refined sugar is really the main cause between like diabetes, all chronic care, joint pain, inflammation. Like wouldn't be right for the American Medical Association to push this narrative against refined sugar. But right? But it's not. What is the interest? The interest is how do we cure you from diabetes?
Not to prevent you from diabetes. So it's not about that, right? And so I think coming back, right, this example really helps in enforcing the same thing that we started, which is like, this is how you need to understand the market forces. But if you're ambitious and disruptive and you think that you want to cure versus how many people don't want to cure, they want to just treat it, right?
But but let me just close one more just so it's interesting. So even though diabetes, it looks like from a macro perspective,
seems like huge.
It's not going anywhere, right? Okay. If you have an actual diabetes prevention technology, you should understand that the other market dynamics is that the payer landscape shifted. Insurance is no longer Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, or CMS, right? Employers are actually becoming the strongest force in healthcare, which means what? They are inherently interested in investing more in these things because reduce the cost of care. And so even if the American Medical Association is not really pushing for, better awareness against it, employers will do it. Why? Because it will reduce the cost for them, and inherently that's what they want. And so that closes the tie about understanding market dynamics. Is not that because you think that one thing is not going to work here, it's not going to work there. You just got to understand to whom you're actually creating value and to whom you're taking away value, right? It's almost like Newton. Nothing's created, everything's transformed. And so, right.
But I think I want to stop here that employers, like you mentioned, employers are sort of having this power to influence what kind of products are going to the market, because that's the most exciting or interesting thing, opportunity wise. for founders who are actually building new age products or healthcare AI. So if I were a founder, one traditional way is to say, hey, is there a billing code that I can get reimbursed to CPT through the existing kind of system of the healthcare and hope that I'm getting reimbursed through the insurance or the payer. The other way is what you said, which is like employer side of things, where can you go to an employer? How does this whole thing work for a founder? How do I, as a founder, actually know that there is an alternative model to think of my go to market, right? I mean, that's what you're essentially saying.
But I think this is a topic that we should spend just one because it's too big. So I'm going to say that it's not clear yet. The reason is because the market is still very in infant stages. Like the problem became too big. We kind of care, but not enough to actually sit down. What I mean, most companies will offer health benefits, but all they care is how much does it cost me and my saving, right? And so then the people in the system, they created something called high deductible plan, which means that instead of the employer paying for it, the employees pay for it. The consequence is I don't have $20,000, therefore I'm not going to go to the doctor, even though I'm short. So what happens is when my cost of care is beyond my $20,000, then we call like high claim insurance coverage goes, like you got cancer, then that thing kicks in and then, pays for it. So then what is the consequence? It's like you force your employee, the member, not to get care. And they're only going to get care when shit is hitting the fan. And that's how the industry works. So if you have a new technology and you want to go talk to HR benefits, it's always going to be that early adoption, like we're in that early stage of the tail. Not every health benefits managers understands. I'm not sure they care enough about things to really go deep in what makes a better healthcare, because they get like three options. They get like bronze, silver, and gold, sometimes platinum options and the prices. But the plan design is the same. It's just a matter of which network can you go and which network you cannot go. Yeah. So if you have a new technology, it's hard for you to go to employer and say, hey, can you please adopt mine? Because they're like, well, I take mine from like Blue Cross, so that you gotta have to talk Blue Cross to get it done. But now Blue Cross doesn't care anymore, because in the employer space, they're no longer responsible for the insurance, which means they just got to keep the money flowing, but they're not going to change anything. Yeah. So then you got to go to this subsection of self-funded plans that actually built the custom plan from ground up, because they got screwed by insurance overnight. There's a lot of cases that suddenly from year 1 to year 2, because they done the high deductible, and so now everyone, their health plan is sick. And so now their health plan grew like 500%. And so from like $500,000, now it's like $2.5 million. So now these guys will go and say, okay, now I have to design my health plan from ground up, because $2.5 million is too expensive to keep paying. I can't keep paying for all these people to be sick. So that's why I'm saying it's very complicated. So we're such in the early stage that the pain is not big enough for a lot of folks, right? And so even for your employee, how do you say you have the best healthcare? You say you can go to Cleveland Clinic, you can go to UPMC.
Yeah, you can go to multiple providers. So,
but no one's talking about like
benefits.
We have this diabetic treatment, because then the problem is, let's say, change behavior. Like you cannot eat chocolate anymore. But the patients are, I want to eat my chocolate. Who are you to tell, right? Yeah. So we're in such an early stage in healthcare, and the problem's still not big enough for people to care.
That's kind of surprising. But I think just to connect the dots, right? If founders have products or some healthcare solutions that have more likelihood to be successful in the new model, which you talked about, self-funded plans, and let's call it employer insurance, right? There are two options broadly, right? And the costs and the team and the skills required for founders to follow each of these paths is different. It's completely different. I mean, you cannot apply the same logic, the same budget, the same expenses involved in terms of setting that processes up. So what do you see? You've seen both, right? I mean, is a rule of thumb, if you are doing this, then this is more likely to work? Or is it like, hey, if you are in 0 to 1, you can try this because this is faster? Is there a logic like that, or how do you recommend this actually? Because that's a question that every founder asks, and that also kind of can open doors to investors too, because you can show some validation that, hey, I'm potentially getting a customer, right?
Very interesting question. I would say yes. If you want the cheat code,
Yeah.
obviously not every cheat code works for everything, but you have to look at demographics. So CMS has a older demographic, a
Mm.
more low income demographic, a more rural demographic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fully funded plans like the Blue Cross, you'll be in like big metropolitan areas. And then self-funded plans, you'll probably be in like tier 2, tier 3 cities. Like there's a factory in
Hmm.
Alabama, there's a factory in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So you read about the demographics, so then you look at who's really your customer segment, and then you could potentially know where to attack first.
Okay. So understanding your customer segment, there needs to be enough awareness. You're saying ultimately, if the founders understand the demography of the customers, so it starts there. And then they can decide, like, is my thing more under CMS, Medicare, Medicaid population that I'm serving, my product? Am I serving these urban guys in these urban settings versus rural settings? Or like, am I serving other personas? So you're saying the user persona is the first thing, I think, clarity wise, and then that decides their go to market strategy, and then they can decide, like, should I need people opening doors in this setting, or do I need people to open doors in that setting in terms of employer
Yeah,
insurance, self-funded plans. And then you work backwards and say, today I don't have these people in my team, so either I can do it with my team, or what is the alternative, right? Then they
correct.
probably go to other companies. There are other consulting firms like the Cheryl Morgans of the world, or like other companies who are offering the service to get that first customer, and then from zero to $1 million revenue. And then that is one way of looking at it. I don't see any other way, because it's probably the best way and the only way for an early stage startup, right? There are not many options. But if you have an internal team, well and good, who can open doors and who can get meetings set up and all that. But if not, then what do you think is the best way to do? Is consulting and having fractional people a better thing, or getting a team? Is that the most critical task? Or because not every founder will be open for equity. It's also challenging to hire founders. I mean, you cannot just get co-founders easily. It's a lot of effort. Is there a better way that you recommend for founders to solve this problem?
I think we have to kind of define what the premise is, right? Like when you say it's really hard to find a co-founder for equity and all these things, I think the
Yes.
premise is the average population would need some sort of income, right? Then
Mm.
you're in the wrong subset. That's why some people say that in entrepreneurship, there's like stages in your life that you get to do it. Like when you're in school, because you got nothing to lose. When you're close to 40, because you built some sort of knowledge network, and then you could do something again. Or when you're like 60 plus, you're retired, now you can do it again, right?
Yeah.
So it's not hard. It's just like you need
Mm.
to be very critical. Where do you go
Mm.
to find it, right?
Mm.
It's not like, oh, the person has 20 years at Cigna, but he
Yeah.
still needs a job and he's going to be my co-founder,
Right.
but his salary is like $20,000 a month. Then that
That's
person's probably not the right person,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the last piece, I think, just for us to hold a little bit is to your point, whether you're changing workflow or you're not changing workflow.
Mm. Yeah.
So one of the most important things in your deck is going to be, let's say, your competitive landscape, right?
Mm. Right.
So your competitive landscape is like, you look at Johnson Johnson, Abbott, whatever, Stryker, and you're like saying, here's what they do, here's what I do, here's why I'm better, right?
Mm.
But in 5 or 10 years, they may not be your competitors anymore. Maybe some other startups that are doing something different. But there's a reason why Johnson Johnson and Stryker may still be around. Is
Mm.
because whether you're changing workflow or you're not changing workflow, are you extremely disruptive or you're just an add-on? That market dynamics will change the ability for you to like onboard people into your new technology. If you're
Mm.
just replacing, A to B and is a cosmetic change because your price is cheaper, maybe that'll be easier. But if you're
Yeah.
completely new, segment of surgery that requires a lot of hours of training, medical education, medical assistant
That's
certification, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So that time in 10 years, maybe someone else came that has like a much better solution and you may be already out of the game. And so the last piece of advice is a founder should really, really spend a lot of time understanding
Mm.
the market. That's how
Mm.
you show value, right? And you got to understand where the market's going. because that's what in every investor's head. Because ultimately the question is,
Absolutely.
okay, get
Yeah.
it. Why now? Why should I take my time to invest in you now?
Yeah,
Right?
I think that's gold. I think we can end this episode. I think founders' intentionality or intention to spend a lot of time in understanding the market, you hit the nail. I think that is everything. And not many founders are actually honest in actually doing that, right? They want the shortcut. They want somebody to educate them. They'll get like 10 people who are experts in that market, but they are not the experts and they don't come across as authentic. I think you hit the nail. I think founders' ability and also the time that they spend, the accelerated learning that they do to really have authority in the market can determine everything. Their success in attracting the right people, the gravitas, right? Even attracting good co-founders, good team members. If you're in the market, you spend time with the right people, you bump into the right people, you get lucky thereby in building those right networks. But I think if you're not spending enough time in the market, you cannot get anything right. I mean, I think it was quite an interesting discussion.
All right, guys. Appreciate for everyone's time and yours, Kash. We'll close this and see everyone in the next.
Yeah. See ya.